never considered myself an advocate. To me, I just wanted to go to the movies. But then something happened sometime later that put it all into perspective for me. And that involved a workplace party for my direct supervisor that was organized for an inaccessible restaurant. Now, this sort of thing happened, not infrequently, and I was used to that, except I was not used to what happened with my reaction. And I became livid. I was so angry. I took a week off work because I just didn't even want to be there. I mean, you wonder why the choice was made. Well, the focus was on the cool venue, not the event or the people who might want to be there. And for that week, I was around Toronto, and I changed inside. I changed who I was. You did not want to cross my path that week. And on the Friday, the last day of that week, I went to do my passport pictures. So I went up to the passport office. An information officer insisted on escorting me personally out of the office, down an elevator, into an adjoining strip mall, and to a shop where it was all glassware in the front and a big tripod in the back. I thought that was odd, but okay, this is where I can get my pictures taken. And the photographer started to fuss, and I was sitting just, fuming and annoyed the whole time, but he really wanted the picture to be right. So he'd fuss with my hair, with the angle of my head. He'd shuffle back to the camera, look in, wasn't happy. He thought my head control cast a shadow on my face. He covered it, didn't really like that, took it off, covered it with something else. And I just wanted to scream, "It's a passport picture, for God's sake. It's supposed to be bad." But he really cared about the picture he was taking. So finally he was happy. Big smile, snaps the picture, big smile, another picture. And then he says, "Okay, they'll be ready in about 20 minutes. So I went to a restaurant to have a bite to eat for lunch. And while I was sitting there, suddenly I realized what was going on. He was going to charge me 5 times the price that it would normally cost and call it art. And he probably had some kickback scheme with the information officer upstairs, because why would he go so far out of his way for me? And I even had half a mind to just say, forget it, I'm just going to leave the pictures and go get them done somewhere else. But I thought that's, defeat the purpose. I just resigned myself to being ripped off. After all, wasn't that the theme of my life anyway? Well, I left the restaurant, and he had left his shop. He was looking for me. So he came over, and he pulled the pictures out, and it was a beautiful picture. So I complimented him. I said, "How much do I owe you?" And he said, "Nothing. It's a gift from me to you." Then he leaned down, and he said, "I remember you from when you were shot." And then he stood up, and he said, "Now go get your passport," and he walked away. So to say that I was ashamed of myself would be an understatement. But what he did, that simple gift from him, was huge for me, because it was as if somebody held up a mirror and showed me who I really was and what I was becoming. And that week, the events of that whole week, really, I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about why access was important, and that's where I really embraced being an advocate. Because after all, if not me, who? The circumstances of my life have provided not only an opportunity, but an obligation to make a difference. And that's when I embraced being an advocate. And I'll tell you, what's important is, the reason that we fight for access, whether it's a workplace party or a public business run by a wealthy corporation, it's because we have to fight for access. And unfortunately, the government recently made some pretty huge changes, passed a bill 107, the Human Rights Reform. And that is going to dismantle the commission and its investigative powers. So it means if somebody wants to launch a complaint, they have to either investigate it themselves or hire a lawyer to do it. Now, the government has made some vague promises that legal aid will be there. And in fact, my case is an example that they would use as to why they needed to make the changes, because it took 8 years. However, there's no guarantee that there's going to be any kind of legal aid for people. So people are justifiably very, very concerned. There's no right to appeal. There are now user fees and legal fees to gain access. So the fight's not over. But I would have to say, what my overall experience has taught me is that for every really ignorant person I've come across. See, some people just don't get it. They just don't get it. And a lot of people can be educated, and even though that tends to be tiresome, the end result is worth it. But there are some individuals who just say, you know what, we're kind of inconvenient. So the message is, if there's stairs, stay home. But for all of those ignorant people, I've come across many more who have the beautiful spirit of that photographer, a man who took such pride in his tiny black and white passport photos and extended such kindness to me. And the day that I give up on the notion of the greater good of humanity, that will be the day I give up. But until then, I will not be moved. Thank you very much.